Let me just follow up with one issue. When Attorney General Holder announced that KSM and others were coming to the Southern District in Manhattan, he went out of his way to say that this trial, he had very, strong belief that there would be a conviction, and that he would not be acquitted.
Right.
And there's been a lot of, I don't know if it's, under the table or over the table conversation about, well, what if he were acquitted? And I'm just wondering from your point of view, when you say, well, I don't care which one we pick, to some extent, we should pick one and we should stick with it. Does that come into your figuring? Do you think that there is just as much a chance of a conviction in a federal court and of a fair trial in a federal court as there is in a military commission?
I think you could have a fair trial in either forum. To me, one of the many frustrating things that I encountered, as I think Josh mentioned, there were 3 people that were waterboarded, including Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. In my view, having spent 2 years immersed in the evidence, there's ample evidence to prove the guilt of the 3 people that were waterboarded without using anything they ever said while they were in our custody. So this whole push to try to introduce that evidence, in my view, was totally unnecessary. And we could have the trial without using that evidence and I believe secure a conviction. I also believe, if you accept that this is war, and it's probably in a popular view, but if they're acquitted, as long as they're still an enemy combatant, they can still be detained to keep them off the battlefield. So an acquittal doesn't mean that give him a bus ticket to go wherever he wants.
Okay, Anthony, you're going to have to wrap up. And I would like you to talk a little bit about how you see the politics in Washington and whether this is a substantive issue anymore or whether it's really become such a political football that it's out of our hands.
Well, I think it has become a political football. But I think the implications of this football game are very serious for substantive reasons for rule of law and the justice system in America. And I'll just start out by saying, first, I appreciate Karen's great work and research. It's always, those of us who are the advocates, we have to rely upon individuals who will look at the facts and scrub them. And the report that she put out on terrorism trials has really been a very helpful tool for us to be able to show, in fact, that the criminal courts are equipped and, in fact, best able to handle these types of terrorism cases. If I put the same report out, the ACLU, my folks would read it, nobody else would. But it's really quite different that NYU does so. And to Colonel Davis and to Joshua Dratel, the one thing I love about my job is that what you will never imagine happens to you. And so I thought that when I started my job the week before 9/11, and then the whole world changed, including my work in it. And then the last thing I would have imagined, the first time I saw these 2 fellas, was when I was an observer in the military commissions back in August of 2004. I had finally been allowed access to the military commissions down at Guantanamo. And I wandered the base for about an hour before the DOD personnel found me. They were all having a nervous breakdown because the head of the ACLU was wandering the secure base of Gitmo looking for a place to stay until they found me. And it was a great article that probably gave Cheney a heart attack when it ran on a reporter's notebook in the Washington Post. And I saw both of these guys in action, and one of the last things I would have ever imagined then, back from 2004 till now, is that we'd end up agreeing on as much as we are. So it's always a live and learn process. What has played out has been a complete capitulation of what are clear promises that the President made, as Colonel Davis laid out, and a possible reversal of the Attorney General that would be catastrophic for that Justice Department, in ways I'll enumerate in a moment. And it's all politics. It's all politics all the time. It's that they have fumbled the ball in terms of how they were going to announce and deal with the New York venue. The Justice Department screwed it up, quite frankly. Phone calls were not made to the mayor or the relevant senators or members of the House, who were gracious enough to acquiesce that morning, but then as they began to see some of the dust up in New York, they didn't have much buy-in to a decision that was forced upon them. And it was, frankly, mishandling of the Justice Department, of how they were going to reach out to constituents in this city that could have been handled much better. And then from there, the thing begins to unravel. The not in my backyard resolutions, the kind of the pontificating of different Republican senators that then give some reason for the Democrats to begin to inch away from their commitments. Hence, you see the changes of decisions by Mayor Bloomberg. And They really didn't play hardball on some of these issues. Ray Kelly saying that these trials are going to cost $200 million a year. Who rebutted the fact that that number is absolutely outrageous? You know, as I understand it, and there might be others in this room who know much more, I know some notable members of the law enforcement community are here. I've been told that the full police department budget for all of our 40,000 police officers annually is up $1.2 billion. So how can this police commissioner get out there and assert these numbers without anyone saying, show me the numbers? How do you calculate that? What's it actually going to be? Where was the response to these local officials and local citizens about the shutting down of Lower Manhattan? And I don't know how many of them have walked through the federal court system down in Foley Square. It's a barricaded part of the city already. It is, God help you, if you have to get through there during a traffic time. And so a lot of hyperbole played out in a way that really let the ball get away from the Justice Department. Now, enough of the commentary. Let me tell you what I think the realpolitik is of such a decision to reverse this course. Leaving aside the civil liberties principles, which are near and dear to my heart, but you take the principles and you play politics. So obviously the biggest concern we have is that the military commissions are an inferior form of justice, just as Joshua laid out, and that we should never use an inferior system of justice to adjudicate some of the most notorious criminal defendants in modern history that will rival the trials of the Rosenbergs. And so if you use a second-class system to achieve an outcome, you forever have that outcome in doubt. But what's the realpolitik? If the West Wing reverses Holder and even forces him to do a Saul to Damascus speech, which is what is speculated, that the Attorney General himself will not allow the Rahm Emanuels of the White House to reverse him, he's going to take it on the chin and say, I've changed my mind. It shows such a politicization of the Justice Department that reeks back to the Gonzalez and Mukasey years. And part of what we've been trying to get out from under is the idea that people in DOJ are taking their orders from someone else on Pennsylvania Avenue. And the demoralization of people who talk to me in DOJ, it's amazing the leaks in this administration because they're demoralized. People within government talk to the likes of me because they're fed up by the fact that they can't get the job done. And that's likely to get even worse and continue as they go forward. The other reason why it won't work, the realpolitik, and I think Josh and Mo Davis have said this, although Mo perhaps is a bit more optimistic. My mind is that the military commissions are never going to work. They're never going to work. I don't like predicting, but on this one I will predict. You know, the record of thousands versus 3 convictions, the lack of rules, the inadequate resources that are down there. For having sat in those military commissions probably about a dozen times, from the first round of the convictions to the one I was just down there in January right before the president signed his executive order, it's a complete and utter joke. You know, the rules, lawyers stand up, they're making motions, cross motions. A judge in the courtroom where I was there said that this was a learning experience on capital cases for the most notorious criminals, and we're calling it a learning experience. In God we trust in the background. It's absurd. The translations, I don't speak Arabic, I speak Spanish, English a little bit. You hear perfect full paragraphs of flowing Arabic with lots of passion. And the translations are fragmented words, no finish to the sentence. You kind of sit there and like, well, the guy just spoke for 4 minutes, and how can the translation from Arabic to English be less than a minute? That's how we were doing it. Those of us who were not Arabic speakers, we would just clock it. Okay, how long is Al-Balol speaking? 5 minutes. How long? This is what we did as monitors. How long was the translation? 30 seconds. Okay. It's just, and unless they have found a whole new cadre of translators down in Guantanamo, it's going to continue to break down. And that's just the infrastructure, the legal issues, which Josh already outlined. If they go down this road, it's going to be a lot of fun to tie up their knickers in a twist on the legal issues.